Good morning. My name is Lizzie Schexnayder. I'm the Professional Development Manager with the Louisiana Legislative Auditor. It is my pleasure today to introduce our instructors. Before I do so, I just wanted to mention that the verification codes for CPE have not begun yet. They will begin with Jenifer's presentation, and you will get 4 codes per hour. So stay tuned for that. So again, let me introduce Ms. Jenifer Schaye. She is our General Counsel for the Louisiana Legislative Auditor. Jenifer represents the legislative auditor and staff in those matters where they are called to testify and or to produce records for further inquiry by state and federal courts. She advises the Louisiana Legislative Audit Advisory Council on relevant audit issues. Because of her governmental background, Jenifer has a broad knowledge of the processes of government and the relationships between various branches of state and local government. Jenifer is also a certified fraud examiner. So welcome, Jenifer Schaye.
Good morning. It's more than happy for me to be here today with you. I wish we were all in person, as Mr. Wagesbeck, our new auditor, said, but I'll tell you what, I want to get a good evaluation from him and from you. So before we start, wherever you are, the 848 or so people that are participating with us, give yourself a good hand. It's a standing ovation for all of us who are involved in public service. I think that we begin on a positive note, and I hope that we're going to end this presentation on a positive note. I have on a pink sweater today, and I hope all of you have on something pink, or at least are thinking pink, for all the people in our state who have been victims of breast cancer, or who may be currently fighting breast cancer, or who have relatives who are. That's really very important to us today, that we remember our brothers and sisters. The other group of people Mr. Wagersback referred to, that I would just like to extend a cordial hand out to before we begin our presentation, are all of you who have experienced the difficulties that have faced us with these hurricanes, Ida, Laura, Delta, all of these things that have come into our lives. We know it's been hard, and I'll say from the perspective of the auditor's office and the counsel for the auditor, I answer a lot of questions, and so many of you have been on the front line, even as your homes are devastated, your businesses, you've been on the front line answering questions and helping your brothers and sisters in your various communities. And so I just commend you for that. Now, I'm going to talk to you about public bid, and I'll say this always when I begin, that I want to give you one thing that if you don't remember anything else, you remember this, and that is 225-339-3871. That's not the number to verify you're participating. That's my telephone number. You call and we'll try to help you. We'll try to help you to get the answers that you need in order to help in your service to your particular communities. Public bid is an issue that people will say, gee, that's so hard. It's got so many rules. I'm going to do my very best in the next hour or so to give you the context and the feel for public bid. So you don't have to know every rule. Mr. Wagesback said it. We're working hard to make sure that our FAQs are accurate, that we explain the issues to you, that we do presentations like this. But if you get the context and the feel, then you're going to answer the questions 90% right in almost every instance. So let's start on public bid. And go to say, initially, what are we talking about? We're talking about a law, obviously, but here's what it's a law about how we buy materials and supplies, how we renovate and reconstruct our buildings, how we even initially build a building. So you say, well, that's okay, right? Because in our lives, we buy things every day. We buy things at the grocery store. We buy things at the department store. And my favorite place to buy things, it's not a commercial, it's just an addiction I have, and that is Amazon. So what we're doing here is we're buying, we're purchasing, we're building the body of government buildings and structures and materials and supplies that help us. What's critical to remember, lays down the foundation, is the predicate for all this. There can be no sweetheart deals, no brother-in-law or sister-in-law deals. And as Mr. Wagasbeck said, and you'll hear me say over and over, there must be transparency and accountability. Transparency and accountability, because we are dealing with a public trust. We are the fiduciaries. We are the trustees of that trust. What are we talking about? We're talking about public money, public property, public time, and me and you, the public employee. You know, what's the key word here? Public. Where I, in my practice, have seen more problems is when people forget that 6-letter word, public. It is not my desk. It is not my computer. It is not my vehicle. It is the public's. And I am a fiduciary holding that in my hand, that public money, public property, accounting for my time, and acting daily as a public employee. So central to the discussion is always the fiduciary role, the role of trust, the whole idea that no matter how long you've been there, public is the key. So you say, well, okay, now I'm gonna just give you a summary right now. And if you got to go somewhere and you don't remember anything else, I'm going to say in public bid law, what you're going to remember most is that you got to be precise. You have to carefully advertise, carefully execute the contract that you construct after the bid is accepted. And here's really something where it's hard for people to figure out sometimes, me too, is to carefully monitor the purchase or the construction. Did I really get it? Did I get the order that they said they were going to send me? Did they build the building or renovate the building the way they said they were going to? And I have to remember, no matter how nice the contractor is or the subcontractor, that public bid does not provide a negotiating tool. Now, what do I mean? Well, in this era of COVID, we've seen lots of stuff change. We've seen the price of plywood triple. We've seen the price of steel go up. And people, we've seen very basic things that we use in our homes, like paper towels, go up. So what does that mean? They said they were going to give us the paper clips for $100, right? Now the guy comes and says, hey, Jen, I can't give them to you for $100. Because if my price went up, I got to charge you $125. No, you do not have the legal authority to change what has been agreed to in the public bid. Why? Because you're not sympathetic to that contractor? No, I'm sympathetic. But because when the bid happened, there was the guy who won or the lady who won, and others. So you lower the price for the winning bidder, and the second person or the third person says, I could have done that. I could have done that. I didn't know you were going to negotiate the price. So what we want to do in all of this is have the same rules for everybody. We're not going to be arbitrary. In the words of lawyers like me, we're not going to be arbitrary and capricious. It just means don't be unfair. Treat everybody like it's a level playing field. And if we do that, we're going to be okay in this public bid arena. So here's my 3 steps. What do I want to do? What do I want to purchase? What do I want to build? Step 1. And what money do I have to build it? Because if the public entity that you're working for doesn't have the money, then you can't do it. You have to have the money. You can't say, like some of us say, man, I'd really like to have that electric car. I think I'll just go in a lick and a promise and go in there and get it. Doesn't work like that in the public arena. The money has to be encumbered, if we would say that. It has to be designated that we have the money. And then say, the third thing is, how are we going to do it? And I say to you who work in the public arena like I do, if you have someone talking to you, whether you're in the public bid, more than 30,000 or 250,000, even if you're below those, you have a contractor or a salesperson talking to you and you don't understand, and it's a complicated contract, red flags. All the beeps go off in your stomach, in your head, everywhere, because it should be a straightforward contract. Offer, acceptance, then producing the whatever it's going to be. So don't let yourself get fooled or feel intimidated by people say, this is very complicated. I don't know if you can understand it. I can understand it. Let's talk in plain English. And if you have problems in those areas, then that's what I hope we can help you with if you call. Now, I always like to say in that context, what we are as lawyers in the Legislative Auditor's Office is we're advising you. As Mr. Wagesbeck said, and his predecessors have said, we don't want the auditors to be in an I gotcha situation. We want them to be in a situation where they're coming in and helping you to be better. Okay, they're telling me we got the first verification code, 8987. 8987. And that is not going to be the score of the next LSU football game. But you'll write it down, 8987. Okay? So now let's go. What are the 2 types of contracts that we're going to have? We have public works. That's the renovation, the construction of a building or some public work, a park. Materials and supplies, that's movable property. There's no definition in the law for materials and supplies, so we take the common sense Webster definition. It is what you need to do your work. We, here in the auditor's office, we use a lot of paper, a lot of pens. They go to purchase those. That's materials and supplies. Now, what is not a public bid type contract is a service. Okay. Now think with me on this one. What's a service? Cutting the grass. Cutting the grass at the courthouse, cutting the grass at the park, doing those kinds of things, washing the windows. That's a service. Now, if it's a blend between service and purchase of materials and supplies. What the Attorney General tells us is that we look at what is it really? Is it really purchasing these objects and they come in for 2 hours and tell us how to use it? Or are we getting software that we're just really we're just leasing and they're here with us all the time? So that's a service. So you need to distinguish those. And I want to make sure I've said this. I think I got distracted when I was thinking of LSU's score. Oh, you should have seen me. I was really distracted Saturday because Saturday was my birthday, and everybody said to me, "What do you want for your birthday?" I said, "Something impossible." They said, "What?" I said, "I wanted LSU to beat Florida." And doggone, they beat Florida. Now, I have no end to anything, but I was very distracted on my birthday and very happy. So I got distracted with the number. I want to make sure you understand, we do not think we are the Attorney General, and we don't think we're the courts. We are the lawyers for the auditor and for you to help you avoid legal issues and to tell you what we will tell the auditors if they ask us a question as they're in the midst of your entities auditing you. This, to me, article in the Constitution is critical. Article 7, Section 14 is saying that you cannot loan, pledge, or donate to any person, I don't care who they are, association or corporation, public money. You can't loan, pledge, or donate. You can't gift them with public money. Now, we're going to talk about some situations where it looks like on its face a donation, but we're going to distinguish it. This is the basis, the constitutional basis of the public bid law. You cannot loan, pledge, or donate. So it means, I don't care if the lady who's in charge of purchasing here is purchasing pens, and she estimates how many pens she's going to purchase. It's going to be under $30,000 for the whole year. But can she buy Mont Blancs for everyone? Can she pay exorbitant prices? No. This is saying from $1, we're obligated to treat that public money as reasonably as we can. So no loans, no pledges, no donations, no favoritism. So this got to be a reasonable value. The statutory references that we have is in the 382211 with, I want you to look at that where it says for public works for a sum exceeding 250,000. That's a mistake. Now, you believe that I can make a mistake? Well, talk to all my friends. They'll tell you I make tons of mistakes. But that should say for a sum equal to 250,000 or more. I got a question here. Somebody wanted me to repeat the discussion about software and maintenance being a service. Well, okay, let me talk about that. If you're going to, I'm gonna stop a minute, okay? And I'm thrilled, I should have said it. I'm happy if you ask me questions. And if I don't answer them now, just like Diane said, you'll call me up or you'll email me and you'll say, "Hey, Jen, I didn't get it." But here's what we're talking about. When we're talking about software, Ordinarily, when you're purchasing software, there's going to be a blending of the services of the professionals and of the software itself. Now, so that you don't have to make that distinction of is it a service or is it purchasing, what's allowed under the public bid law is to do that as a request for proposal, an RFP. You don't have to, but it's allowed. And I encourage you to do it because of the technical nature of software and hardware and the changing of all of that on a daily basis, cybersecurity issues. It's better to do it as a request for proposal. Now, what does that mean? How is that different than public bid law? Or it is within public bid law, but how's that different than putting out all the qualifications you want for in a public bid? Here's how it's different. In a request for proposal, just describe what you need. Describe in plain English what you need, when you need it, and for how many people you need it, and how you're going to judge who can give you the best service. So in a request for proposal, you're not looking at who is the lowest bidder, but I'm looking at more what will fulfill my needs. And that's why they've made that, the legislature wisely some years ago made that an option for software purchases. Maintenance, the difference between is maintenance a service? I think it is, because maintenance is, hey, I'm going to paint this one room. But if maintenance is going to go on for 2 years, the law says that's not really maintenance. That looks more like a public work. Now, how do we distinguish those? I'm going to tell you, I don't know, except to marshal the facts. And it's kind of like what the Supreme Court said about pornography. You'll know it when you see it. But I know that you have to look at the whole issue of, are you doing one thing or are you doing a whole total renovation in the sense of the maintenance or in that being a service. So sometimes if you look at the AG opinions that we've added to our FAQs and are added in this PowerPoint presentation, that'll help you distinguish. We also have gathered over, I guess, around 1,000 questions from all of you over the last 10 years or so, and those are posted, and those should help you because it's real live people asking real live questions. That database is searchable. It's totally searchable. So I hope that helps some, but I want to make sure that if you need to ask it further, submit another question to Lizzie and I'll go at it again. This $250,000 amount has been changed in the last legislative session. Prior to that, we were raising it every year by the Consumer Price Index, the CPI. This 250 is supposedly going to stay with us until 2025, when they'll again raise it with the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. But here's always the but. The caveat is the legislature meets again in the spring. They could change the 250 to 350. They could exempt certain people from it, like they have done for levies and levy boards and drainage districts. So we'll watch that and we'll keep you informed. Okay, we got another verification code, and this is code number 2, and it's 5128. 5128. And this one is I don't know. 5128 makes me think, I hope they're not talking about weight or anything, you know. It's 5128. I think Lizzie has another question. I love this. That means people are listening. There's not just 848 people sitting out there. Let's see. All right. They're telling me to move the mic closer. Does that help, y'all? I hope it does. Okay. Now, here's my other question. How does the public bid law intersect with the Louisiana Procurement Code? Good question. I'm going to get to it later, but I'll tell you now. The public bid law applies to all of us, you in local government. The Louisiana Procurement Code applies to state entities, but the public bid law allows local government, local institutions to adopt, or quasi-publics to adopt the Louisiana Procurement Code. So here's the shorthand. We've adopted the procurement code, so we purchased the mayor's car off a state contract. Allowed? Yes. Because what's happening is, the background of that is, the state office of purchasing has already done the public bid. They've done the whole procedure, and that car that you're purchasing, or that police car, or that fire truck, has been publicly vetted by them, and you can purchase off of that. Article 7, Section 14, can a public entity donate to local festivals for a sponsorship? Well, that one I'm going to say is also fact sensitive, and it depends. And we'll get to it at the end, Cabela. And the answer is it for a public purpose? Is it gratuitous? And do you think you'll achieve a public end by doing it? And I'll say, this is the Jenifer Schaye rule. And that is, how much are you donating? How exorbitant or nominal is it? Somebody says to me, can the town X have a Christmas dinner for everybody in the town because we have a festival during that time, and we'd like to take all 1,000 residents to Ruth's Chris? Probably not. That would probably violate Article 7, Section 14. Somebody says we have a Boy Scout pack that is having a festival, and the town would like to give $25 toward helping the kids buy the chicken. Probably okay. So it's a case sensitive. Where are you going with it? Facts. So I don't think I can answer it except on a case by case basis. And there are lots of issues in lots of examples in the Attorney General's opinions. Now let's look closely, a bit more closely, at materials and supplies. So if it's less than $10,000, you're going to use the prudent person standard. What is that? And I say what it is, and the Attorney General opinions say what it is what would you do if that were your money? That were your money and you were spending $500, how would you do it? What would you go and look? Or just buy the first thing you see? If it's between 10 and 30,000, then we're going to say, the law says, you must get 3 telephone bids. We also need to add here, could be email bids or fax. Who uses a fax anymore? But maybe you do. So you get those. You say, well, I got them, but I kept them all in my head. I have a good memory. Really? You don't want to do that. You want to paper your file. You know how they say in real estate, it's location, location, location? What we say in the public bid law context and in some other regulatory laws is it's documentation, documentation, documentation. On X day, the clerk talked to X person and they emailed us their cost for the paper clips. And we did that for 3 of them. If it's more than 30,000, you're going to advertise 2 times in your official journal or paper in the area. You can accept electronic bids, and you may put that bid on your website. The whole advertisement on all of that has to be at least 15 days before the opening of the bids. When you open the bids, it's at a price you can't afford. Remember, you have to have the money to pay for it. If it's a price you can't afford, then you have to cancel all the bids. You open the bids in public, you read them all, and you decide. If you don't take the lowest bid, you have to have a very substantial reason why you're not taking the lowest bid. It can't just be that the guy was a Ole Miss fan and you hate Ole Miss. It has to be something much more substantial. Although I personally think that might not be a bad reason, but it won't work in the law. Now, let's look. I think I might have missed one. Let me go back. Sorry. No, got that one. Okay. I tell you that materials and supplies were not defined in the statute, but that we take the ordinary definition. So with materials and supplies, a summary, you're going to know the amount, you're going to advertise, you're going to receive and open the bids, you take the lowest responsible bidder, and then you're going to do your contract formation, which could be a purchase order. Now, you select lowest responsible bidder. I was just joking about, sort of joking about Ole Miss. But the responsible bidder is going to be the person that you know can fulfill it. Now, if there's someone that is just obviously not responsible, you do not have to take them. But know that if you don't take them, you're going to have to do some due process to give them a chance to prove whether they are responsible or not. The other thing I want to say about materials and supplies is that you want to make sure that at the beginning of every fiscal year that you are estimating what you need in materials and supplies. So that's going to really be your bid. Not, you might get it on a month-to-month basis, but you know from experience how much paper you need, how much gasoline you use, and that should be bid as a whole, not piecemeal. That tends to look like what the statute says is prohibited, called splitting. You don't want to do that. Now, sometimes people want to do that because they say, my friend will have a better chance if I do it that way. But that can't happen. You have to look at the whole. Remember what I said at the beginning. It's a level playing field. It's not sister-in-law, brother-in-law, friend, campaign contributor. It's public property. I'm getting the best price that I could get for it. You say, well, also, let's go to look at, am I compelled to use the lowest bidder? I want to make sure you're looking at, not compelled, but be very responsible on that. Okay. Now, public work is building, renovation. See my little truck? It's a little truck. That good. He made it up that mountain. So for our public work that's under 250,000, again, you're going to go back to the prudent business person standard. What would I do if it were my money? You ever renovated a house? You ever built a house? I say that that is like a money pit, right? And so when you go to renovate a house or build a house, you might interview different contractors. You might go to different stores to see what kind of flooring do I want. And what you're going to do is, say it's under 100, 250, I might want to use an RFP, or I might want to act like it's over 250 and do an ordinary public bid process. All of those are acceptable. If you say, I'm going to do the public bid process, because even though it's just 150,000, I want to do that. So then I'm going to follow the public bid process. Well, then that means you're committed to the process. Once you start, you're committed to it. You can't, get out of the gate and then turn around and say, I didn't mean it. I'm going to do it this way. So think about it. Anytime you're doing any of these public bid issues, it is really good. It's important. It's significant for you to do your most work up front. Mr. Wagaspak said today, he didn't say today, but it is today, we're putting out an RFP for someone to help us revive our website, our emblem that we use for the legislative auditor, our branding, how we look on Facebook and Twitter and all the other social media sites. We put out an RFP for that. Lizzie Scott, who's just done a great job of planning all of this media, and I and my assistant Pam Mixon have been working on that with a social media committee in our office for about 4 months. So nothing happens easily unless, you just can't, not unless, you can't just throw it out there and get it done. So we've done a lot of work on the front end of that RFP. Did we have to do an RFP because that's a service? No, but we wanted to, so that Article 7, Section 14, we get the best price for the public dollars that we have. So we encourage you, we will assist you, we will help you in any way to think through your public bid situations. I think they're bringing me some more. Is that another? We got another verification code, and this is number 5, and it's 6395. 6395. That is not what I'm charging to give this talk. Okay, if it was, I would take y'all all out to Chris's. There's a question. If you go with the state contract, do you still have to get quotes or bids to make sure it's the best price? I guess what you mean there is if something's on the state contract list. No, if it's on the state contract list, you can do it. But I mean, you might want to look around. Sometimes people tell us, well, X was on the state contract list, but I could get it much cheaper. That's not a fault of the office here in the Division of Administration. You know what it is. It's just different times that the bids went out, different circumstances in the country. So yeah, you can buy it at that price, but if you think you can get it cheaper, then you might want to go that way. On the procurement code, is it correct that if a state agency wants to buy paper supplies, they have to follow the procurement code, not public bid? Yes, that's right. State agencies follow the state procurement code. Is that the case for all state agencies? The legislature and the judicial branches are not obligated to follow the state procurement code. They're not. That's in the law. But we do. I'll tell you that if you want to ask. What the auditor does is we do that because like we're like the minister in Have a Glass House. So if we don't try hard, how can we ask other people to try hard? So that's what we do. Oh, I'm sorry. A verification code I gave you was number 36395. That's okay? And Andre, who's here, is telling me it's her fault, but it's nobody's fault. It was just trying to get everything straight and we messed up. So you got that one right written. You got that one on your sheet. 6395 is verification code number 3. Okay, now let's go to our public bid law. This is the big enchilada, as they say. Public works, building renovation. This is where they're spending the big bucks. This is where the council meeting goes on for longer than you want. This is where people start to act like they're not going to send Christmas cards to each other. This is where they all start to move around in their chairs. This is where the council people want to be mayor, criticize the mayor who wishes that he or she could go home early, wants to go home. Public works. Remember now, it is that 25,000, that amount, 25,000 to, I'm sorry, 250,000 and more, then you're going to have to go through a little bit more extensive process. You're going to advertise 3 times. You're going to advertise in a journal, your official journal that's in the area. You're going to put that advertisement, if you have one, on your website. You're going to make sure that it appears 25 days before the last one appears, 25 days before the opening of bids. And that day doesn't occur on a Saturday or Sunday or a legal holiday. All right? So you got it out there. You got it on your website. You got it in the journal. Can I call all the people I know are interested in it? Of course. Call them. You want to stand on the roof and, tell them about it? That's okay too. But this is what you must do. You must do this. The public bid law is a prohibitory law. What does that word mean? Well, what it means is you have to do everything that's in the public bid law. Can you do more? Yes. Can you do less? No. Can you contradict the public bid law? No. Think of the public bid law like a recipe. Now that, I've said that before, and it strikes me as so funny because here we are, we live in Louisiana, and I'm native Louisiana, and I love Louisiana. But I'm Italian, half Italian. I mean, I don't use the recipe for anything. People ask me, how did you do that? I don't know if they're complimenting me or telling me don't do it again. But, I don't use a recipe. Public bid law is a recipe. Cajun folks, the way I love jambalaya, I know sometimes I ask, can you tell me the recipe? No. No, sometimes they say no because it's a secret that grandpa had and they're not telling anybody. Or sometimes they just don't know. Dash this, dash that. Different than public bid law. This is Betty Crocker. This is a recipe. This is not Julia Childs. You're not putting a dash of this, a dash of that. Here's some general facts that I have on there. There are other things that you'll see in our FAQs, but this to me is really significant. You cannot have changes within 72 hours of opening of the bid. You say, oh my God, but something happened. What can I do? You can't extend the opening 1 week, and you can go even another week, but you got to be careful because otherwise you're going to have to re-advertise. Now, emergency, ordinary emergencies. The traffic light broke, we had to fix it. There was a sewer pipe broke in the main building, we had to fix it. That emergency requires notice after the fact, different than a catastrophic event like a hurricane. So here's your summary for your contract. You have the amount. Make sure you have the amount in there of what amount, meaning how much you're going to spend. How much you're going to spend, your advertisement for bids, the receiving and opening of bids, then the selection of the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Now, okay, I'm going to see. I wish you was sitting in the front of me so I could see how many people see a different word than I had in for materials and supplies. In this, I'm talking about the responsive and responsible bidder. Responsive. The public bid law for public works says certain things have to be included, like the contractor's number, their special unique number for a license, their licensing number. That has to be on the envelope. It actually says that in the public bid law. Now, why? Because some contractors got a little bit upset when people were bidding who weren't licensed contractors. The Attorney General said, if you don't have that license number on the envelope of your public bid, you're disqualified because you're not responsive. So you want to be extremely careful of what you expect in the bid. And you want to, when you review the bid, you have to see, did they do that? Did they do that? Did they follow everything that you requested? An example would be in our public bid, our RFP today that's going out, we said you must come to a mandatory bid conference on November 1st. Mandatory bid conference on November 1st. Now, suppose somebody doesn't come to that bid conference and then they bid. What happens? They weren't a responsive bidder because they didn't follow the mandates. Responsible and responsive bidder, you can say them in any order. You look at it and you know I got a bid, you got a bid from Jenifer Schaye, and you've heard about Jenifer Schaye in your parish, in your town, in your area, and you say, look, she's like Jack the Ripper. She doesn't do her job, blah, blah, blah. It's not just that I don't like her glasses or I don't like her politics. She doesn't get it done. Can I, out of hand, disqualify her? You can send me a letter, notice of disqualification, but then I'm entitled to a hearing, and you can't go forward until I've had that due process hearing. And if you decide against me after the due process hearing, you have to wait 5 days to give me a chance to go to court to get a judge to see if you did it right and agreed with you that I should be disqualified. So it's a big deal to disqualify somebody. All right. Change orders. I want to talk about change orders a bit because they seem to cause people a problem. Change order is necessary in any building. Any building, if you've been involved in any building yourself personally. I mean, or if you watch HGTV, they always seem to change. The subfloor is bad. We got to put in another floor. We didn't know that that drain pipe was going here. It's got to go here. Can you have change orders? Yes, but they have to be within the scope of the initial contract. Within the scope of the initial contract. Therefore, you can't say, for instance, they're building the school, here's the architectural design, but I like this builder a lot. So I'm going to let them also build the parking garage. That, to me, would be outside of the scope, right? So look at change orders carefully. Then in the next slide, you'll see I think we have it. Let me go back. I want to make sure that you see this. That the change order, I don't have it written on the slide, but the change order recently they've added that if a change order is 10% of the original contract and $10,000, or if the aggregate, like a whole group of the change orders, is 20% of the whole contract and $10,000, it must be recorded by with the clerk of court as the contract is recorded, and it must be in writing. So that's all in our FAQs, that 10% and that 20%. But I'm going to just tell you, as a rule of thumb, don't do a change order that's like, hey, Jen, can I move the door? Don't do that. Have a process and a procedure for change orders. And I think all change orders should be written, because that's where people get into paying too much and losing track of what is this real project. And you can write in to the contract for the public work exactly how you want to do the change order. I love doing that. I love writing it in. So the change order can't be done unless the chief administrative officer approves it. It's in writing and signed, and it's been determined that it's part of the scope of the work. Okay, so let's keep going. I know we're moving. Now we got verification number 4. This is not Chinese, so we're not going from 3 to 5. We're going to 4, and it's 9349. Verification code number 4 is 9349. All right, I got some more questions here. Good. All right, they're telling me we're getting a lot of questions. I wish you would write in Yeah, I'm getting a lot of questions because you're interested, not because I'm unclear. But I hope I'm clear, and I hope that's why I'm getting a lot of questions. But I want these questions. So here's a question. Should the purchase of software always be treated as a supply and either quoted if under 30,000 use a public bid or RFP, regardless of the software as a license, downloaded or used on an entity server or device or for web-based use? Well, I don't think it's an always question. I think you got to look at the circumstances of it and determine whether it's a supply. If you're leasing something, that's probably not a supply. But if you're purchasing it, and then you're going to get into the question of, am I purchasing it, or am I really getting a service? So if I have a lease service, it depends on that would probably not be subject to public bid. But if the lease looks more like a purchase, then we would. I know that that's not answering as definitively as you might want, but it really does depend on the facts. And that's why I like the RFP. Next question. When accepting bids, can you consider geographic location or company size? Not usually. You can say what you want. You can say, I'm building the building. It has to be built within X days. I have to be able to talk to the contractor on a regular basis. But the AG a few years ago put out an opinion that said you couldn't say everyone who works on this building must live in a given parish. So that's what I meant about the prohibitory law. But can you describe exactly what you need and exactly the time periods you needed it? But you can't say you have to be a Fortune 500 company to build it. Are the dollar thresholds for each purchase on construction or for the fiscal year? On construction, it's for each construction, for each renovation, where you're doing the more of an estimate of how much materials and supplies. That's going to be for materials and supplies, where you have a good estimate for the year. Is demolition a public work? Yeah, well, it's been answered both ways by the Attorney General, but the courts say, one court, the Fourth Circuit, says it is a public work. So I generally like to treat it as a public work. Then I know I've covered all the bases. I might say in that for garbage contracts, if it's an exclusive garbage contract, that has to be bid. If you have several different garbage contractors in your parish or in your town, that would be treated as a service and can be negotiated. Can I explain with architects and engineers? Architects and engineers for local government is a service and not bid. Architects and engineers under the state law for state entities, that we have a certain bid process for them. But for local governments, it is a service. Now, in connection with that, nobody's asked me, but let me say this to you. In connection with that, then we want to make sure that the people who are building the bid package are not the same people who are going to bid on the bid package. But it can be part of the general process in the community of budgeting or big plans for the community. But the real building of the bid package, if you hired somebody to do that, to construct that bid package with you, which is wise, you just can't then hire that person's company to build it. Now, look at on this next slide here, which is kind of a summary slide. You don't want to have a splitting of jobs. So you're not gonna say, well, I don't want to get to that 250. So I'm gonna do this part of the building at 100, and then another part of the building at 100, then another part of the building at 100. So I never got to the 250, right? Wrong. If it was a total project and you had the money aside, you can't do a splitting of the job. I've talked about no out of hand disqualification. The contract drafting must follow the bid specs. Remember my RFP example. When I draft the contract, when we draft the contract, won't just be me, for our RFP on branding, we will be following what we have requested them to bid on in our contract. Change orders within the scope, and some change orders, not just to move a door and it costs $25. Nothing costs $25 today. But a small change order, no, doesn't have to be recorded. But remember the 10%, 20%. Procedures and practices, I want you to make sure that you're precise and you monitor. You have to use the bid forms in public work contracts that are provided by the Division of Administration. And I have already talked about the demolition. Now, I know I'm getting close to my time, and I'm going to tell you right now, 20 minutes? 10:20. Okay. I thought it was 10. Okay. It's 10:20. That's good. Okay. I hope you think it's good. But you want to breathe a minute? I'm going to breathe a minute. And now we're going to talk about something that's close to what we've been talking about in our lives for the last few months. That is emergencies and extreme emergencies. Let me give you an example. Emergency, red light went out, had to get somebody to fix it so that we don't have an accident on Old Hammond Highway and Airline in Baton Rouge. That's where I live. And if you ever been in that area of town in Baton Rouge, you do not want to go there without a red light. It would be not a good thing. Another example of emergency, pump station is down in the area. Nobody wants sewer in their house. That's an emergency. You got to get it fixed as it happens. What's an extreme emergency? Ida was an extreme emergency. Laura was an extreme emergency. When the roof went off of the hospital in I think it was St. James Parish, that's an extreme emergency. Nobody's going to ask, did you get the lowest bid on that? No, we're not going to do 30 days. You're going to get it fixed. As one of the people who used to be the auditor here, Steve Terrio, said, when you're sitting in your chair and the water's coming down on your head, that's an extreme emergency. Now, caution on that. FEMA rules change, and you want reimbursement from FEMA. So extreme emergency, you still want to document your files. This is what happened. This is why we had to fix it so quickly, and we didn't have time, but we are sure we got the price, the best price we could get, given that extreme emergency. If it's an emergency, the red light, the pump station, then you're going to tell the council at the next meeting, and you're going to give certification and notice within 10 days, and it's going to be published in your official journal. Okay? So I hope that helps you with emergencies and extreme emergencies. What extreme emergencies are not, got the definitions here. What extreme emergencies are not is, I forgot. Geez, Miss Schaye, they call, sometimes I get this call on Fridays. And you know, it's a panic. We forgot to buy X. Is that an emergency? No, that's a mistake. And you just got to acknowledge the mistake and figure out what you're going to do. But that's not an emergency. An emergency is not that you can do it because now you have American Rescue Plan money, or now you have the water, you've gotten money from the water fund that the state has set up. No, newfound money doesn't create, hey, I got to do it now, I don't want to bid it. An emergency is not because there's public pressure. Planning. Public bid law requires arm's-length transactions, no arbitrary behavior. So we do account for emergencies, and we do account for catastrophic conditions, extreme emergencies, but you can't create the emergency. You know, they say you can't cure stupid, can't create an emergency. You can't, if you made a mistake, then think about how you can remedy that mistake, but it'll be another mistake to call it a emergency. And I hope these definitions will help you. And we have within our FAQs, we have some information. Here's some alternative procurement methods, and I'm happy for you to look at those. Purchasing surplus property from another public entity, don't have to bid. We've talked a lot about purchasing an off-state contract, RFP for telecommunications, and there's special rules for fire and emergency response. But I caution again, in this time of hurricanes, make sure that whatever you're purchasing, whatever you're doing, that it's in accord with FEMA's guidelines so that you can get reimbursement. In this, I want to talk about one other thing that it comes up, but I want it to be there, to talk about public piggybacking. And that is to make sure you look at 38-2212.1 and make sure that, I think that's the right statute, and that we can help you with that you can piggyback. Let me get to that. You say, what is piggybacking? Piggybacking is when someone else has already bid it, and you're within 1 year of their bidding it. So you want to use that same vendor. And the statute 30, I've said, gave you the wrong number. It's 38-321.1. 5 parts to that. And one part is make sure it was properly bid, and that you're not purchasing more than 2 times the original, that you have the consent of the bidder, the first one that did it, and that the vendor agrees, and that you have identical equipment and the price is the same. Now you see this little flashing thing up here, 2020 session, and if we go on 2021 session, is that we are giving you the new laws that went into effect. the electronic bidding exceptions, or that how you would put it on your website. That's the electronic bidding exceptions. The other one is that you can do a reverse audit, a reverse auction for what you need, and you can find all of those described in our FAQs. For emergencies, for the notice after the fact, do we have to advertise what was done? Answer yes, in summary fashion. And that was on the slide I previously had up here. Can you give an example of a substantial reason not to accept the lowest bidder? That's if you thought it wasn't a responsive person. It was somebody who was really just going to just cause trouble and not give you your money's worth. If all of the bids are over the budget, therefore rejected, and we would adjust the project and rebid. Does this need to be approved by the board? Answer yes. Before we can move forward with advertising, yes. The board, the council, the alderman, the police jury, whatever you call them, this all should go before them by ordinance before you begin the bid process again. Address bid requirements and related documents for public notice, requirements for the purchase of equipment during hurricane emergency. You have more latitude during a hurricane, but you don't have carte blanche to do anything you want to do. You can say when you go to purchase materials and supplies, I had to purchase this because of the hurricane. You can always say, I want a Panasonic whatever or a Dell computer. But if somebody else has the same qualifications, the same criteria for that computer, then you can't just say I'm going to purchase it because it has that particular brand name. Does that make sense to you? I hope it does, because that gets into, which I haven't seen the question yet, but I bet somebody's going to say, what about sole source? Well, I'm going to tell you, I tell you all this all the time, say it on the phone about once a month to somebody. On this planet Earth, there are very few sole source contracts or vendors today. Now, the distributor will tell you there are, or a given vendor might tell you there are, but you put that out for bid and you're going to get other people who say, we can do it. We know it. We can make it. We have it. For pre-mandatory meetings, if they don't sign in the sheet, can they still bid? I say no. You put that in your bid package. Here's the mandatory meeting, the bid conference, and you put there a sign-in sheet so you know exactly who came and what company they represent. Is the state contract literally a single contract? No, it's a list of all kinds of items, materials and supplies, all kinds of items that you can go to. And it changes, it's posted, they update it. A $600,000 recreation park. Do we bid each splash pad, amphitheater separate, or bid entire project? Well, that's a good question. Is it a main project that you're doing? And do you have the money now? And if you have bonded and you have the money to do it, then it's one project. If you don't have the money to do it, you might say, I've got to do this project in phases. So phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. but I don't create the phases artificially just so I don't have to bid. I can have alternatives within my bid. So I can say, here's my project, alternative 1, 2, 3. But you have to accept, you can't disqualify someone by reversing the alternatives. We could talk about that. That's a little more complicated and probably beyond the scope of this talk right here. Are there parameters for giving to other local governments that are experiencing extreme emergencies? You can share between local governments. You can. I think that when you share between local governments, you should probably have, even though the statute permits it, a cooperative endeavor agreement so that you can say why you're lending them the backhoe. What you can't do, the Attorney General says, is buy the backhoe for them, or I'm using backhoe, but any equipment for them. But you can share equipment. That's permitted in the statutes, and obviously would be important in this time when there's catastrophic issues that are happening. Is purchasing from federal contracts, GSA, oh, we got another verification code, and now this is the real number 5. All right, and it is 8885. 8885. So that's your 5th and final. Got one more verification code. 3 8s and a 5. Okay, thank you. You can purchase off of the General Services Administration list if you're going to use a Louisiana distributor, and if it's lower than anything you could get off a state contract. With respect to purchasing for school boards, when using cooperative purchasing, can bids be awarded to a vendor listed as a reseller or awarded cooperative contract? There are certain special rules for school boards for cooperative purchasing, and those are in our FAQs where we explain that. It's in the statute. Were there 5 guidelines for piggybacking a bid? Yes. And that's in that statute. The statute is 38:321.1. Yes. Okay. All right. I'm not gonna do all these AG opinions. I like to put them there so that you have them, and I might say on a little bit on some of them. Home rule charters, if you live in a city or parish that has a home rule charter, you have a little bit more leeway, depending on what the home rule says. This hiring preference one is the one I talked to you about before, that you can't, the Attorney General said that you can't say you have to hire local workers. Talked about the rejection of bids. I think these will help you to see what contracts for services are. That might be give you a bit more of a context for that. This uniform bid form, that's on our website, and you'll download it from there. It's on the Division of Administration's website. They're real serious about this. You have got to use this uniform bid form. Okay. I've talked some about cooperative purchasing, and I would just urge you to look at these AG opinions. There was cooperative purchasing for under the local services law before they put in this 38:321.1. They put that in to help state government state entities do cooperative purchasing. So if you need, I'm sorry, piggybacking. I said cooperative purchasing. I meant piggybacking, which is a form of cooperative purchasing. But if you think you're going to piggyback, then I want to make sure that you look at those 5 elements in that statute. And if we can help you with it, we will. Can you discuss the use of qualified purchasing groups instead of a state contract? If it is not in the law that you can use a cooperative group, like we have it in the law for hospital service districts and for school boards, if it's not in the law, you cannot use it, okay? Unless that cooperative group went to state purchasing and got themselves put on the state purchasing list. I mean, we'll get Happy Joe's cooperative purchasing calls everybody in a certain area, and they say, you purchase from Happy Joe's and you will be purchasing at prices way below what you can get under public bid. And we've been doing this, Happy Joe's says, in Texas for the last 20 years, and it works. Well, the answer is it works if you want to get the law changed in Louisiana. You cannot do it with a cooperative purchasing group unless the law has been changed in Louisiana. So this brings me to the end of the public bid part. And I'm kind of a simple person. I like the principle of KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. That stupid is me. Public service is not a secret society. And public money is not a treasure trove for you or for me. So if I'm purchasing at a good price, following all the rules, if I'm building at the best price I can get, given the environment, and following all the rules, remember what I said about an hour or so ago, 90% of the time, you're going to be fine. 95% of the time, you're not going to be above the crease in the newspaper or the flashing sign from the newspaper that's on the internet saying you have made a mistake. That does not make a good breakfast. You do not want that. So get out in front of this, work with us on it. We'll work with you on it. And, you know, I talked to somebody last night that didn't like the answer I gave on a question, wasn't on public bid. The lady was about jumping down my throat at 5:45, and I'm thinking, not good. And then I realized what the problem was. I think she had given the advice that I'm telling her wasn't okay, and that she's got to go tell her boss wasn't okay. Well, that's just better than having it in the newspaper the next day. You know, so I want to help you, but, and I'm not always right. And Angela Heath and Patrick Virgadamo, who work with me, they're really good lawyers. They're excellent lawyers. And we talk a lot about once we answer your questions, and we'll call you back and say, you know, we didn't do it right. Cabela is a case. I just want to briefly go through this. I have about 8 minutes. Before 2006, if a public entity wanted to give money for the question that was earlier about, you know, to the school festival, these were the questions that had to be answered. Now, here's the questions. Public purpose for the expenditure or transfer. It's not taken as a whole, does not appear to be gratuitous, and you're going to get something back. Let me briefly say what Cabela was about. Is a sporting good place, and I can't ever think of what's the one in Denham Springs. Bass Pro. I always get that wrong. But they came up and said to those very Ascension and Livingston Parish is, don't let us pay school taxes for some years and the economic development will be worth it. And then school taxes will even be more. That's what they said. And the Supreme Court said, okay, we can defer the taxes. And that becomes Cabela. That becomes the new standard for the transfer or the changing of how we do assets and money between public entities and quasi-public entities and public entities and private entities. But you can't just write that down and not go through those questions. Because remember, here's my old friend, Article 7, Section 14. Even in a Cabela situation, cannot be loaned, pledged, or donated. So that's why we have the elements: public purpose, is it gratuitous, and what will come from it. Now, is it quid pro quo, tit for tat? I do this, you do this? No. But generally, there has to be a sense that you're going to get something back for this deferral or donation of public money. And here are some very new AG opinions. And I like the one about the coffee, because we actually got that question. And I said, call the AG. And I like it that they said, by giving coffee to your employees is reasonable, and expectation that doing so will provide a real and a substantial benefit. That's what I told the lady on the phone, but she was adamant. She didn't want to buy coffee. Go ask the AG. I'm glad there was someone in the AG's office who agreed with me. The signage for the panhandlers, that's a very interesting opinion. All of these AG opinions give some older ones, and you can see, though, the AG has consistently tried to look for reciprocal obligations. What will be for the greater benefit of the community? I think I might have about 5 minutes, 7 minutes, and we got the last verification code for this session. 2362. 2362. You got it? So if you weathered it with me and you did all that, you're going to get credit, and I appreciate it. I just would end with saying all law is meant for the betterment of a community. And that's what we try to do with the public bid law. Why do we have rules? So that we don't favor one person over another. So that even though discretion is good, that we don't just have discretion, that we have certain set standards and certain parameters. I think that makes public service much more equitable to everybody involved. It shouldn't be that a person of stature in the community is treated better than a person who's working their way through. So what we try to do in the public bid law is to keep the playing field level, to make sure that there's not an imbalance, and to make sure that whatever is purchased, whatever is built is going to inure to the benefit of the citizens. As far as the Legislative Auditor's Office goes, we want to help you. We want to be transparent. We want you to be transparent. We want to be accountable. We want you to be accountable. And we're continuously trying to get you the best answers that we can. I'm going to tell you, and if you don't know anything about me, know this. I know I make mistakes. I know I change, but I'm always trying to listen to what you're really telling me and how that fits with the laws. We don't make the laws. We don't enforce the laws. We just are trying to work with you to interpret the laws. So I'd like to thank you for your attention this morning, because judging by the questions, you gave me a lot of things to answer, and I appreciate it. I look forward to talking with you, or like to give you my email. It is Schaye, Schaye, @lla.gov. So thank you very much. I know you have a break now. Is that right? They're saying yes. You have a break, and then we'll have the next person up. Thank you.